Hi, everybody. Gotta see if I can find myself. Oh, there I am. How is everybody tonight? I'll type something to see if the comments start coming through. Hi, everybody. Make sure you say something when you come in so I know you're here. It's kind of a warm one today. Oh, my goodness. Hi, Lynn. Hi, Teresa. Oh, Arlene. There's Colleen. Hi, everybody. I went from 1 to 12 in like 1 second. A second here. Let me see if I can see when people are saying something. Okay. Hi, Deb. Hi, Lynn. Is everybody seeing me okay? It is very warm outside. So this is the first hot day since I lost my tree. And my air conditioner is like never stopped running because the tree was like on the south side of my house over where my living room, where my thermostat is. And I don't think the air conditioner's ever stopped running today because there's no shade anymore. This is the first hot day. So I did turn the air conditioner up a little bit so it wouldn't, it might run less, but wow. I was not expecting that. I know it's working because the other rooms are cool, but the living room is not. So my first hot day without a tree. So at least it didn't come down on the house. I have to be happy about that. So, nope, sorry, my camera's deciding it's going to be, there we go. So how is everybody tonight? I missed everybody last week. It was kind of weird not having a class. When there's 5 Sundays in the month, I'm going to take 1 Sunday off, I figured. So I ended up taking the middle Sunday off. My dad had surgery on Monday or on Wednesday this last week, so it was nice to have a little bit more time off. But then, of course, he landed in the hospital. So actually the procedure went well, but then he ended up in the hospital. So I was kind of back and forth between Animals and here all the rest of the week, from Wednesday through, I came home on Saturday morning just in time for the class. So it worked out okay, but he's doing okay now. But he had to have a day in the hospital to get better, so. Yes, no kidding, Jan. I'm sure you're glad to have the power back on. I was only without power for about 12 hours, roughly. And then I didn't have internet though for a couple of days. So my internet came back on Wednesday after the storm. But oh my gosh. And Dad had his stent replaced in Cedar Rapids, and we went through Marion and Cedar Rapids. Oh my. I have never seen so many trees, and I was seeing it almost like a week after the storm. So I mean, I have never seen trees like that. Just literally trees huge trees uprooted and just laying on the ground. The tree was like not even broken. It was just completely uprooted and laying on the ground. So yeah, it was just amazing. Yeah, he is feeling better. He was too busy to talk to me a little bit ago. He was busy watching, I think, a baseball game. So he's back to normal. He's kind of hanging out at home and hanging out watching the Cubs, and so yeah, I came home yesterday morning. So it was nice to get home. I got a little sleep last night, so, and he's feeling okay though. Wow, I know there was still a few people they said that did not have power in Cedar Rapids. They were working on it, but there was still some places in Cedar Rapids and Marion area that did not have power yet. So yeah, it was just, I had no idea. I knew it was bad, but when I saw the trees, I mean, the carnage, it was just incredible. So, yes, and I knew Clinton, Nancy. Yes, I knew Clinton was hard hit, and you guys didn't have power for a while either, did you? Yeah, I knew Clinton and DeWitt area got hit pretty hard too. So, yeah, so I was pretty lucky here. I I was with my father when the storm hit, and um, at his house, he doesn't have a lot of trees around his house anymore because he's lost his trees already. And I didn't really see really any damage. There was no damage at his house, but I walked out on the street in Anamosa, and oh my gosh, it just looked like a war. It looked like a war zone. I had no idea. And when I got home, I really truly felt that I would have my carport in my sewing room. Because I've got a carport that's on the southwest side of my house, the west side. And that's the way the wind was coming. I really thought this carport would be sitting in the middle of my sewing room. And there's a tree that was between my house and the neighbor. And I really felt that that tree would be down in my back bedroom. And by some act of God, the tree went down between the houses. It just kind of clipped my eave spout and was laying on the ground. And it was a very, very large old tree. So anyway, I didn't have any damage other than my eave spout needs to be refixed. So fixed. So yeah. So Carol, you had bad storms out there too. I knew the storms were bad out there. I hadn't heard from out west of here how bad it was. You don't see as much. I don't see as much on the TV from your area. So yeah, I knew it was bad out that way too. Yeah, it was just incredible. I mean, I've never seen anything like that in my life. So they said we had one of those some years ago, but I don't remember it. We had a really bad storm, I remember that during that time, but that's what they called it, evidently. So yeah, I know there's still folks without power. Yeah, it's amazing. So yeah, it's pretty hot today, so I'm glad I have power. So okay, well, let's see, what time is it? We got 7 minutes after. So let's do a little quilting. So we're going to do some quilting on We Whisk You Merry Christmas. And when I do these, so I think everybody saw the video that I put up on last night. I think I did put it up last night. The gal that has Emily Scott Designs that does the edge-to-edge quilting, I love that video when it comes to learning how to sandwich your quilt. And what's really nice about that video is that she does it, a larger quilt on a small table. She shows you how to find your center and get it all pinned, and I pin based mine. So that's how I've been doing my quilts for actually quite a few years now, because I found that video. And I wanted to share that because I know I have some quilters that are people that are not really quilters, that you may not have ever sandwiched a quilt before, or a larger one. And it's so easy to do on a table, or like I go out to my kitchen island and I can do a great big quilt. Hi, Mitzi. So I can do a great big quilt on my kitchen island and just slide it back and forth, but you just need to find the center, and I work out from the center. So the video was good, and that's why I wanted to share that, to show you how to get your quilt ready to quilt. And I do pin based. I am not a big fan of spray basting. If that is good, if that works for you, that's fine. I do get a little annoyed with the pins sometimes, so I maybe don't put as many pins in as I should, but I do pin based. I'm just not a sprayer. So what we're going to do, I'm going to talk, okay, so we're going to quilt this quilt like I have quilted a few other things with Design Center IQ Designer in the machine. Yes, her skers. She calls them skers instead of skewers. Yeah, she's from the South, I think, somewhere, or like in Southern Ohio or something like that. So, yeah, she's a cool gal, and but that video was so helpful to me because I never dreamed of doing something that simple to get my quilt done. Because I used to crawl around on the floor, sandwiching my quilts. It's so much easier on a table. So anyway, I just thought I needed to share that with everybody. Okay, so when I do these quilts, I get it all sandwiched first. So, here's my quilt. Let me hold this up so you can kind of see it here. So here's my quilt. I got it all sandwiched, and I've got it all pin basted. Okay, and on mine I use this red and white polka dot backing, And oh, by the way, the backing fabric came in yesterday. So for those of you waiting for the backing, I will get it cut on Tuesday. I'm sorry it didn't quite get here, but they actually rushed it out to me because they got it in, and I called them this week and they got it right out to me. So I will have it ready for you to pick up this week. So I know some of you hadn't really gotten to, you know, the whole quilt done anyway, so you were probably about ready to need it anyway. So I will get in touch with you. I had 10 of you that ordered backing, and I'll get it cut for you and let you know when you can pick it up. So anyway, I got this all ready today, and I use I'm using I like Hobbs 80/20 backing, or batting, I should say. And it is a little poofier because it's got just a little bit of polyester in it, so it makes everything a little loftier. I'm not a big fan of Warm and Natural. It's a little on the hard side for me. It makes the quilt kind of stiff. It's kind of hard, and it doesn't let the quilting be lofty. So I started using this several years ago, and I really like it. I also like that Dream Cotton, the Dream Cotton brand that you can get at quilt shops. That's really good. But I've been using Hobbs now for a while. So I actually had some scraps that Judy had given me, and I don't know if you can see it here. Can you see right here where this little line is? I actually sewed a couple of pieces together to make it wide enough for this quilt. So I just used up some scraps because it's about, it's not quite 40 by 40. It's like 37 by about 38. You know, it's not quite 40 by 40, but it's actually a little shorter than it is wide. It's wider. So anyway, I just used up some scraps then and used my red polka dot fabric that I got at Walmart for the backing. So, okay. So I've got it all pin based, so you can see some of the pins in the bottom here. I took some of the ones out of the middle. There we go. Took some out of the middle because I actually quilted a little bit on this today, so I could have a little bit done. And so let me go ahead, and I'm just going to stuff this through the machine, and I'm going to turn the camera around here. Does anybody have any questions about the pinning part? Does everybody understand how to do that? Give me a second. I'm going to have to change my needle. I got a pin caught on my needle, so I better change my needle in case it's slightly bent here. Does anybody have any questions about the pin basting and the getting it ready to quilt it part? I thought that video would really be helpful for everybody if you've never done it that way. The little skewers, I get those like at Walmart or someplace like that, and then I actually use tablecloth. Can't remember if that's what you use, the tablecloth, the metal things that we used to, when we went camping, we always stick those tablecloth things to hold the tablecloth so it wouldn't blow away. That's what I use to hold the backing and stuff down. All right, well, let's get the needle in here. Sometimes you got to be careful with the pins. I get frustrated with the pins. So, give me a second here. Sometimes I do this and then they get caught and then I'll bend my needle. So, all right, rethread my needle here. Okay, so let me turn this camera around. Use binder clips, right? So the binder clips work okay on the smaller tables, but see, my table was always too wide for those, so I used those clips that we used to put the tablecloths on with. That works really well. I went to the camping department and bought them. Those worked really well because I had an old kitchen table that belonged to my parents, and that's what I used to do this on. So now I have to do this on my table or on my counter, and I have to use those tablecloth ones because my counter's even wider. So the binder clips were too narrow for me. So, okay. So I did a couple of rows here. Let me see if I can get a little closer so you can see. So I did a couple of rows. Now we're going to quilt this like I have been before. I'm going to quilt this in IQ Designer / Design Center. For those of you who do not have that ability, because that ability is in a lot of the machines, and I know a lot of you have the machine that has that ability. It's in the Dream Machines, the Destinies, the Luminaires, the Solarises. It's also in the newer machines. Some of you have that newer machine, the Stellaire. So it's in that, and then the baby lock version of that is called the Altair. So, I mean, there's a lot of the machines that have this ability now to make your own designs. So it works very well, and you can make these stippling designs block by block. So I just do this one block at a time. I find it actually goes very quickly, and I make, what we're going to do is make a stamp to go around the embroidery design so that I don't sew over the stitching. And like this one here, you can see this one a little more because it was done on red. So I just did this one a little bit ago, and I made a stamp of this embroidery design so that the stippling would just go around it, and then there wouldn't be any stippling over the top of it. Okay. The other thing I'm going to show you is I'm going to do a little bit of regular quilting, because I did do some regular quilting on this quilt too. On these little sashing strips, they're not very wide, but I thought they needed a little something in them because they look kind of plain. So I actually made a little serpentine, and I just used a sewing machine to do that, and it works extremely well. So we'll do a little bit of that. And then when I did these little the little squares, these are little 2.5 inch squares. They finish up, I think they finished up 2 inches. I just did like corner to corner quilting on these and made like an X in each one. And I did the same thing up here with these little ones, except what these little ones, what I did is I went from corner to corner, and I did 2 squares and made kind of like a rectangular X in 2 of them, like that. Just because I wanted it to be, they were such small squares, I didn't think I needed to make an X in each one, but you could do that as well. So I did part of the quilt with the design center, and I did part of the quilt with just regular stitching. And then I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the borders. So let's just talk about the borders before we get started. I had several ideas about the borders. I am going to do a video, because I'm going to quilt my borders with that new, the Luminaire and the Solaris have a border function in it that have these beautiful borders that you can do. So I am going to do my borders that way. And I'm going to make a video of me. I'm just going to turn the camera on while I'm doing it, and it will take a couple hours, but I might just turn the camera on and let you watch me do this, because it's really easy and it turns out beautifully. But for those of you who don't have that ability, I was thinking about these borders, and I thought, gosh, I like those little serpentine stitches. I thought it might be really cute just to put like little rows of serpentine stitches along the border. And like, you know, just do straight stitching, and I could use my laser light or a quilt guide to keep them evenly spaced, because this is only like a 4 inch, it ends up being 3.5 inch border. So you wouldn't have to have too many in here, and that would be really cute. The other thing I thought about doing with the border is just maybe marking the quilt and making it into like little squares that I made X's in. So I could just mark it, and then I could just go up and down and do like make X's in the border. I thought that would be cute. So there's lots of things you can do with just quilting with a walking foot or with just a regular foot. You could also do that in these blocks. So like if you wanted to do some cute, you could do free motion. If you like to free motion and move your quilt, you can do that with your free motion foot. Or I thought it would be cute to do some straight line stitching in these blocks also. So it just depends on what kind of quilting you like. I know a lot of you, though, do have the ability to do what I'm going to do tonight. So the Design Center function is such a wonderful function, and I use it mostly. No, Nancy, the Design Center function is in the sewing machine. So it's in the new Luminaire, Stellaire, Solaris, the Dream Machines, the Destinies. So it's something that they've had for some years now, and it is in the sewing machine. So I'm actually going to digitize and create all of these designs right in my sewing machine. So, and I can't remember what machine you have. Do you have a different brand of machine? Do you have like a Viking or something? I can't remember what you said. So, okay, and the other thing I'm going to be using tonight is I'm going to be using the dime snap hoops. So here's the top of my snap hoop. And we're going to quilt some of these little cookie designs tonight. These are real small blocks. These are like 4 inch blocks. And so I like to use, so when I quilt this quilt, I really like to just do one block at a time. So generally what I do is I use the smaller hoops, something that's fairly close to the size of the square that I'm working on, so that it's just easier to manipulate the quilt. I just find it easier, you know, to not have to have a great big humongous hoop that I'm working with. So like if I'm doing a 4x4 hoop or block, I'm just going to use my 8x8 hoop. I could use the 5x7, but this way I don't have to, I have a little more play room. So this is an 8x8. And so what I do is I go ahead and put the base of the hoop in the machine, and I just leave it in the machine. And then I just move the quilt in and out. Once I get the quilt in here, okay, then I'm going to put the top on. So I'll have to slide the top in here. When I'm kind of done with it, I kind of pull it up like this and just hang it on the machine. But I'm just going to get this in here. And you know, if it's not real straight, it doesn't matter, because I can tip the design, because we have a camera, okay? And we have a camera that we can scan, and we have a, but as you can see, I'm going to have to remove a few pins here to get these pins out of here, because when we scan, you do want to be very careful that your foot doesn't catch on these pins. So I do remove my pins. And sometimes I have to put them back in again, you know, for a little while I'm quilting. After I've removed them, I sometimes put them back in when I'm done with this section. And I also kind of started in the center. So like when I started on this, I started on the kind of middle, the second row. It wasn't the middle row. The two middle rows is what I'm doing first. Kind of started in the middle, and then I work out, and then, you know, to each side. And then I moved down to this next row, and then I kind of started in the center, and I moved out, and then I'm going to move this direction, just like I would any other, you know, any other quilt. That's kind of how I, you know, usually quilt. So the other thing with the magnetic hoops, if you can help it, don't put the top on top of a pin, because they're it keeps them from like making really good contact. So sometimes they'll want to scoot on you a little bit. So make sure you don't have pins underneath there if you can. All right, so this 8x8 hoop, this should be fine. I think I'm going to be okay. I might be a little close over here, so we'll see. Otherwise, I may have to slide it this way, but let's see if it works. I think it will. Okay, so I got my hoop, my quilt into the hoop. I am going to measure now. I need to measure this block so I know exactly how big my block is. So I'm just going to measure it with, and it's just slightly under 4. So it should be 4x4, and it's just slightly under 4 this way as well. So I need that measurement, because that's the measurement on my finished block. Then I'm going to go over here to my design center. I'm going to go into my design center. Actually, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into embroidery, because when you do these, you also need your designs that you created these blocks with. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I need to make a stamp out of my design that I used to create this block. So I'm going to go to my stick, and I'm going to find my We Whisk You a Merry Christmas blocks. Here's the embroidery files, PES, and then the quilt. So I'm going to go find, it's the little bell cookie that I'm going to do. So this is the first one, actually. It was the bell cookie. So we're going to choose that one, and I'm going to bring it up on the screen. Okay, so now you can see, this is something else I'll tell you about. You can see there's a scan up here, because I was quilting earlier. There's a way to get rid of this. So a lot of you may not know this. Some people call me all the time about it. If you go up to the settings, I'll show you how to get rid of this so we can see better. You go up to the settings page, and I don't remember which page it's on. I always have to look. So, okay, so it's on page 10 on my Luminaire. But see where it says background image display? The Dream Machines have this too. I want to delete this. And the reason it's still there is because I did not complete the entire design. If you sew your entire design out and complete it, it will go away. But if you don't, it will stay there until you scan again. okay? So sometimes I have to delete it and get rid of it. So that's what I just did. So now we can see what we're doing here. Okay, so there's the cookie. Now this cookie, as you can see here, has this little bit, it has felt around it, okay? Now that sticks out a little bit. So I have to remember, I don't want the stippling to come in right up to the stitching because I have this little piece of felt sticking out. Now if I were doing some of my other blocks, like maybe this apron down here, I would want my stamp to come right up to the stitching because there's nothing sticking out from the stitching. So just so you know, I do these slightly differently depending on the type of block. This one I'm going to need to move it back a little bit just so that it won't, the stitches won't come up on the felt. So to make a stamp, it's super easy. We just brought this up, right? We're on the editing screen. I'm going to hit edit. Works the same way with the Stellaires, the Dream Machines, Destinies. I'm going to choose this little button down here, and that looks like just an outline of a flower. And the ones on the Dream Machines are a little different color, but it's the same icon. I'm going to touch that, and that makes a stamp. Then I can tell it how far away from the stitching I want it to be. Well, normally I leave it at 0. But in this case, since I've got that felt sticking out, I want it to be a little ways away from the stitching. So I'm going to go ahead and let's just make it like 0.5. Just a little bit away from the stitching, okay? And then I'm going to hit memory at the bottom. And what it does is it saves that outline that we just created, and it says recall from my design center stamp pattern list, or if you have a baby lock, it says IQ designer here, okay? So now that stamp is now in that other part of my machine for me to choose. So how easy is that? So you just bring up your design that you're working with, make your stamp, save it, and then you're ready to make your digitized design, okay? So we're going to go ahead and hit OK. I'm going to hit the house button up here because I'm ready to go to Design Center on my machine. Okay. Oops, somebody's texting me. I want to make sure it's somebody's, oh, okay. All right, so here is my Design Center. Whoops, come back just a little bit. My Design Center. Now, we said that the square, we have to define our block first when we do this. So this square we said was just slightly under 4 inches. So I am going to get a square. There are shapes in Design Center that I can draw with. So I'm just going to click on the shape button. It's like a circle and a square, and I want a square. So there's 3 different tabs here. The first one is just an outline. The second one is just a fill. And the third one is an outline and a fill. Well, I just need an outline for this exercise. So I'm just going to choose the outline, and I want a square. Okay? Then I'm going to hit OK. And at this point, I need to get the size to the size I need it. So I'm going to hit the little size button right here. And whoops, look, I'm in millimeters, so I can't, I have to digitize in millimeters, but I have to do things in inches. So I'm going to go to the settings page up here again, and I can go back and forth. So I'm just going to hit the settings. I'm going to go to page 9. It's page 8 on the Dream Machines. I'm going to choose, instead of millimeters, I'm going to choose inches, and click OK. So now I know how big it is. All right. So I want it to be just slightly under 4. So I'm going to take, there's a bunch of different buttons here. I made it mad. Second, I think I made it mad. Oh, it's not selected, so I just need to select it again. Sorry. I made it mad. Okay, get it selected. Okay. And go back. So now I am going to go and bring it down to just slightly under 4. And there's a bunch of buttons here, so the one I'm using has the 4 arrows all pointing inward, and that means it's going to bring it down in aspect ratio. If you need it bigger, this one makes it bigger in aspect ratio. These other buttons, whoops, now I made it, I'll have to go back again, sorry. I keep touching the screen. This button right down here, I don't know if you can see it very well. This one is the select tool. And if you touch out here somewhere, it will deselect what you're working with. So it makes it mad. So I touch that, touch the original one, and then you just have to draw a box around it to get it selected again. There we go. It has to be red. Okay, so I'll be careful this time. These other buttons here will squish it or elongate it. So if you need to go, a little bit narrower, like some of these squares that I did today were rectangular shaped, so I need it narrower and taller, that kind of thing. All right, so we're going to bring this down in aspect ratio. We're going to go down just under 4. So I'm probably going to go about 9 or 3.95 because it's very close to 4. And we'll see if that's okay, because we can always resize this again if we need to. So let's go with that. I'm going to hit OK. So I've got my block. That's the representation of my block on my quilt. Then I need to get that stamp in there because I need that. I don't want it to sew over my bell. Okay, so I need that shape. Remember, that was also then gone in here, and it also becomes a stamp, which is in the same area we were. So we're going to click that button again. And the stamps, remember the little flower? The stamps are up here at the top. So I'm going to click that tab. And there's my little bell that we made earlier. So I'm going to click on that. And click OK. Now that bell shows up in the middle of my little 4-inch block that we made. Okay? But I need to get some stitches in here now. So what I want to do is I want this to be, now, whatever you want to do, it's up to you, of course, and your creativity. Normally when I do blocks that have like appliques and stuff in them, I kind of use stippling to keep it simple because I want the block to show, not so much the quilting. If you get more involved with your quilting, the quilting is going to be a little more noticeable than the applique. So it depends on what you're looking for, whatever you're looking for in your quilt. So I am going to choose stippling for this one. And there are 2 buttons here. And the same way on the Dream Machine, the top one is for the lines, and the bottom one is for the fills. So I'm going to touch the fills, and I want to choose, this is like a fill, like, an embroidered fill, a solid fill. You can choose stippling, or these are those beautiful decorative fills. And if you want to use these are absolutely beautiful. You can use these as well. You can select them, and there's all kinds of different ones on my machine. I guess there's new ones in the upgrade, so I'm anxious. Oh, look. So here's the new ones. They aren't awake yet because I haven't gotten the upgrade, but here's the 6 new ones that I'm going to get when I get the upgrade. Okay, so we're going to have 42 different designs if you get the upgrade for the Luminaire. So I'm excited about the new ones. So, okay, so we're not going to use any of those. We're going to use the stippling. So I'm going to choose the second one. And down here, just so you know, you want to choose a color that you're going to be able to see on your block. Now my block on this one is kind of a light gray, so I think the red will be a good color to choose because I'll be able to see it when it shines down with the projector. So just be thinking of that so that you can see your design. If you don't have a projector, it doesn't matter as much because you're going to be using the camera and the scanning to do this. So you can do this 2 ways, okay? So I'm going to choose the red color because I know it'll show when I turn on my projector. So I'm going to click OK. And now I want to make the stippling around the bell. I don't want it inside the bell. I want it to be around the bell. So I need to place it. To place the stitches in Design Center, you touch the little paint pot. And it's the fill. And I'm just going to go out here and touch with my finger around the bell area. And then look, see, I've got little stipples around there now. But it doesn't stipple in here on top of the bell. Okay? Now I'm ready to do some settings. So I'm happy with that way that looks, but I want to do some settings. and I'm going to click next at the bottom, because the next page allows us to change like the stitch length, the density, that type of thing. Well, I learned to digitize in millimeters, so I need to go back to millimeters now. So I'm going to go back up here to that, that little settings page again. I'm going to go back to page 9 on my machine, click inches, and go back to millimeters for temporarily. Click OK. Now, the stitch length of 2 is very short, and that's fine. You can leave it at 2 if you'd like. I usually move mine up to about 2.5, just a little bit longer stitch. It's not real long, but it's just a little bit longer, and you've got batting in here and stuff, so I like that better. So I'm going to click OK when I'm done. And then the next thing is the density. I can't really tell you what's the best density. I kind of have just found out that 5 is very, very close together. It's very close stippling. So if you want it to be very close, that's fine. I've been using 6 or 7. Seems to work quite well for these. And these are not large blocks. So I've been using 6. That seems to be a nice size. It's not too close, but it's not too far apart. So I've moved mine to 6 millimeters. And I'm going to click OK. And then the bottom, the next one is how far from the edges the stippling is. So I usually leave it at the default. It seems to work well, so I'm just going to leave it at the default. Now on the Luminaire, we have another button. The Dream Machines do not have this, but we can choose between a single line or a triple stitch line for our quilting. I like the single line for my quilting, so I'm going to leave it on that. And it does default at the single line. So that's what I'm going to do. So then it's changed on my display. On the Dream Machines and the Destinies, you have a button down here that says preview. So you have to hit that in order to see what it looks like. Ours automatically populates. They just changed Design Center slightly. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to hit set down here. And it's going to tell me convert it to embroidery pattern. Oh, well now we're going to go to embroidery. So I'm going to hit OK. And now this should look very familiar. This is the embroidery side of the machine. So it just popped it right in. I just digitized it, popped it right into the embroidery side. So now we're ready to embroider. Okay? So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to bring this out over so you can see. The first thing I'm going to do is I am going to scan, because I would like to get my design close with my scanner. So my scanning button, and this is basically the same on all the machines, to scan with this machine is super easy. There's not anything to it. You hit the button that looks like a camera. Okay? I'm going to hit that button. Mine pops open this other little screen, but the Dream Machines and stuff will just say it's going to move okay. I have to hit scan first, and then I get that little message and hit OK. So we're going to watch this. Now, if you have some pins in here, you do want to watch those pins. There's one right here, so I am going to kind of watch that it doesn't get too close. Okay? And what I really like about the camera, see, here's what's in my hoop, right? And I'm going to pull this design. I'm going to grab it if I can get a hold of it. And I'm going to pull it down so that it's pretty close to where I want it to be. Now, if you do not have a Luminaire, this is how then we would completely arrange where this design is. I'm going to click close here. I would then hit embroidery, and if I have a Dream Machine, at this point what I would do is I would move my design. I might have to tilt my design slightly here, move it. I would be moving it so that it fit completely in that scanned area. Okay? So when before I had my Luminaire, this is how I did this. Now you can see it's slightly crooked, so I might go back there again and rotate it maybe just ever so slightly to the left so that it's a little bit less crooked. That looks better. Okay? And then what I did with my Dream Machine, and a lot of you, this is the old time, everybody, we used to use this a lot. This little icon that looks like a square with an arrow on it will actually move the machine so you can see exactly where it's going to sew. Okay? So what I do for that often and the Dream Machines have this, and so do the Stellaires. You can turn on your laser light. Okay, and you may not be able to see mine too well because it's on the camera, so it's a little different. But then what I did is I would take that little, I always called it the runaround, and I would see exactly where my machine was going to sew. Now see, it's still a little off, and I can probably see it better than you can. So I would then alter my design, and I would use this runaround again with my Dream Machine just to verify that I have this design exactly where I want. So I use the laser light on my Dream Machine and that little runaround so that I could see where this was going to sew. So right now it's a little low, so I would need to move it up. Okay? But on my machine, I have another thing that makes this so much easier. I'm going to turn off the laser light. I have a projection camera on this machine. So I have this little cone. It looks like a projector cone. I'm going to hit this. Second. There we go. And it's going to turn on the projector. So it's actually going to project my design right down onto my fabric so I can see exactly where it is. Okay? How do I do the runaround? Let me show you again, Kathy. This little button right down here, let's see if you get a little look. This one right down here, it's at the bottom of, it's going to be on your sewing screen, and it's going to be towards the bottom, and it looks like an arrow, kind of a square with an arrow on the end. You touch it, and then you touch this up here. Okay? I also turn on my laser light on my foot, like on your Destiny. Touch the W, and it will turn the laser light on so you can see where it's going to sew. Okay? And I use that for a lot of things. That's how with the Dream Machines you can really get much more precise because you can see where it's going to sew with the little runaround and the laser light. Okay? But with the projection camera, I can look at it right on the fabric, which is incredibly, it makes it much more exact. And again, you may not be able to see this very well. I'm going to try making this a little darker. I don't know if you can see it. I think maybe you can see the red a little bit there, the red line. So what I'm seeing when I'm looking at this is that my design's a little bit low, and I need to raise it up just a little bit because I'm looking at my camera. So I'm going to move it up, and I'm using the move buttons on this screen that I'm on. And on this part of the screen, I'm using these buttons here to move the design. And then if I want to move my projector, which I do, I want to move it over, I'm going to move the projector with my finger, and it's right here, this little kind of square or rectangle. So then I can see over here, I think you can see the red lines. I'm looking to see if my stippling is going to land where I want it to. Now I think it's a little high now, so I am going to move it down a bump. I'm going to bump it down just a little bit, and then I'm going to move my projector down to the bottom half of the design to see where I'm at there. Now that looks pretty good, but it's still a little crooked, so I'm going to use on the screen, so the screen here, this will rotate, so it needs to go this way. So it needs to go to the left. So I'm going to see if I'm going to hit this button a couple of times to see if I can square it up a little bit more, because it's just a little bit crooked. And I think I need to move it over just a little bit more, because I'm looking at my projector down here. So I think you can kind of see the red. So I'm looking at this. Looks pretty good. Let's move the projector back up to the top. And like I said, I do this with the runaround and the laser light with the Dream Machine. So it's maybe not quite as accurate, but it does work pretty well. And I've done some stuff with my Dream Machine, you know, before I got this machine with this technique, and it worked quite well. Okay, that looks pretty good. I think I'm happy with that. Still needs to come over this way a little bit. There we go. I'm going to check the bottom again. That looks better. get it all lined up. This is not a very big block. This is only a 4x4 block, so we won't have a lot of stippling on it. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. I think I'm happy where it is now. I'm going to click OK. Okay, it's going to turn off the camera. I'm going to turn off my laser light. And I'm ready to sew. So at this point, I'm going to make sure everything's okay, there's no pins in the way. And I'm going to start the machine, and we're going to stitch the quilting. This is completely done in the machine. Now, yes, you could do this in your software. If you do not have a machine that does this, you can do this in software. The same type of principle that you could you can make your quilt square the size of measure your quilt square and make a quilt square, and then put this quilting inside of it and around this. And so, yes, you could do it that way. That looks pretty good. I always have a little trouble, and of course, you know, I always hit my green up here just a little bit, so I did again. I have a tendency to hit my little green strips a little bit, but it wasn't bad. Okay, so that block is now stippled around my belt. Now you notice then, but remember, there was actually two pieces here. Remember, we made the outline. We don't ever sew that outline. It's just there as a placeholder for our block. So we're not going to sew that. That's why this thing never goes away until we're ready to you either have to delete it, or it goes away when you scan another block. Okay, so we'll just let it go away when we scan another block this time. Okay, so I'm happy with that. I think that looks pretty good. It's not, you probably can't see it too well. I'm using white thread. Okay, and on mine I used white thread just because a lot of the quilt had light colored backgrounds, and I thought the white looked good. It also looks nice on the green and on the black because I used it on the borders as well. So I was real happy with the white thread. I just used all white. I'm using a number 11 needle in the machine. Embroidery needle is what I'm using. Yes, Lynn, I could have if I wanted to. I have a tendency to just do one at a time because I like to use the smaller hoops. I'm not real hip on big hoops unless I have to use them because they're just kind of harder to, they're unwieldy. So I usually kind of use the smaller hoops. I do a lot of quilting in these smaller ones. So this is an 8x8. So I used, and then my thread. A lot of people ask me what kind of thread I use. I'm actually using, this is the Madeira long arm thread that I use for my long arm. And this is, it runs real well through the machines. We have it in both stores, and I really like this, and it's also in the bobbin. So this is just long arm thread. What about the tie on and tie off? Okay, so yes. All right, so Gail, that is a good question. Yes, there's going to be a knot on the back of this quilt. Now this quilt is for me. Actually, this quilt's for Judy. This is Judy's birthday present, and I'm quilting this for her. Yes, there's going to be a knot on there. This quilt is not going into a competition, and it's my quilt, and it's okay that there's a knot on the back. What I do is before I give it to anybody or finish it, I always go and clip the knots a little closer to the base of the fabric, and then there's only really one knot though, because you know it starts and stops in the same place. So I don't usually have a lot of knots on the back. I just trim them a little bit, and I'm perfectly happy with that. Some people are not. If you're not, these machines do not work well pulling the bobbin thread up because it still does a tie in and a tie off. You can't not make the machine do that unless you fast forward through all of it. And then you could pull your thread up, fast forward through the tie offs, and then you'd have to let it sew and then stop it before it ties off again, and then you could bury your threads if you want to do that. I'm not quite that worried about it. This is a wall hanging. I'm happy with that. I'm not putting this in a competition. Okay? All right. So I'm ready to go on to the next block. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull this up. I'm going to kind of hang it on the top of the machine here, and I'm just going to pull the quilt over. This one's harder to hang on the machine. It's a little smaller. The bigger ones hang better. So I'm just going to pull this over. And you see, notice I didn't have to take the quilt out of the machine at all. Okay. Now I've got a couple pins down here. I'm gonna have to take these out because they don't work too well to have them on under the hoop. So take these out. But this way, I didn't have to take this quilt back out of the machine. I can just kind of flop the ring back on there. I'm just making sure it's lined up. And I try to get it as, you know, as straight as I can. I mean, it's not perfectly straight, but it's not bad. I don't think I got this one very straight. So let's see if I can get, oh, that's what's causing my problem. I got a pin over here that's in the way. Okay. Nancy, what is the question? Is this only on the new Luminaire? No. This is the original Luminaire that I have. So this is the original Luminaire. So I'm not sure what your question is. What is this? Is this on the new Luminaire? I'm not sure what you're asking. But this is the original Luminaire. I don't have the new one yet. I'm just going to get an upgrade. Okay. So I think that should be okay. All right, so we just need to be able to do this little guy here. We're going to do this little gingerbread person. We're going to do the same thing. Okay, so I'm done with this design. I don't need to keep it. You can keep them if you want. You can save them, like down here with memory. You could save it in your machine if you wanted to. I'm not going to. I'm going to go ahead and just delete it. I can always make it again if I need it. Okay. Then we're going to go and repeat the process. This time I need my gingerbread person. So I'm going to go to my embroidery designs. We'll go a little faster this time. I'm going to go down to We Whisk You Merry Christmas. And I'm going to get my little gingerbread man. Here he is. Right here. I'm going to set him like I was going to sew him. Now let's get rid of this scan because it's just kind of, you know, in the way. Go back to settings. I'm going to delete that so that way you can see better on the screen. Oops, hit OK. All right, so here's our little gingerbread person. We need to make a stamp. So I'm going to go up to this is on the editing screen. I'm going to edit, click the little flower, and I'm going to make my stamp. Now remember, this one also has a little ridge around the stitching. So I am going to increase the distance just a little bit so that it won't stitch over my my felt on this one. Okay. So there's my little gingerbread person. I'm going to save him because we need this stamp. So I'm going to click memory. It's going to go into my design center. Click OK. So now I'm done with the embroidery design. I still am not quite sure. What I'm doing, Nancy, is on the Dream Machines, the Stellaires and the Dream Machines on up. So what I'm doing is actually on a lot of the bigger embroidery machines. The Stellaires on up. And the Dream Machine is no longer made. But we occasionally will have, I have a really nice used Destiny right now, which would have all this, but it doesn't have the projector on it. It has the scanning, but not the projector. Okay. Yes, she has a Stellaire, and yes, it does have most of what I'm doing. Her machine has this. Yes, it does. She has a Stellaire XE1. The gal that just got it. Yeah. So her machine will do this. Okay. So here's my little gingerbread man. We need to make our block, and the block should be the same size. We'll just measure it for sure. Should be just under 4. Yeah, this one's a little closer to 4. So, yeah, it's just a hair under 4. So we'll go back to my design center. I'm going to choose a shape because I need a square. So we're going to choose a square and OK. Then I'm going to size the square to just under 4. Oops, see, I'm still in millimeters, so I got to go back to inches. In the settings here. Okay. Then I'm going to use my aspect ratio button and I'm going to go down to just under 4. So we'll probably do about the same size, 4.95 or so, 96. 9.5 should be good, okay? Then I'm going to hit OK, and I have to get that stamp because I want the shape of my little gingerbread person. So he's in the same where the shapes are, and the stamp button is up here. It's the flower, and here's my gingerbread person. And I'm going to see, okay, and now he's in the center, okay? I need to fill this with a stipple. Again, I'm going to use a stipple. So I'm going to get, my fills are in this one here. This top one's the outline. We don't need to worry about that. We're going to get the fill. I'm going to use my stippling. And the background is white, so the red should work well. I should be able to see it. I'm going to hit OK. And then the fill button is the little paint pot. I'm going to go ahead and touch on the outside of my gingerbread man so that it only fills between the gingerbread man and the edge of my block. And I'm going to click Next at the bottom. I can't quite see it. There it is at the bottom. Okay. Then I'm going to go back to my settings because I want to go back to millimeters while I'm doing my settings here. And hit OK. And then my length of my stitch, I want it to be 2.5. I want my density to be at 6. And I've just played around with some of these, play around with them and see what you like. Just do some squares and do some test pieces. You can see 6 may not be big enough for you or be too big. You can change it. And then I'm going to leave this setting and this setting at the default, the bottom two at the default. Okay? And hit set. Then it's going to send me back to the embroidery side of the machine. And I'm going to have to take these 2 pins out so we won't get anything caught on this little strip down here. Okay? Then I need to scan because I want to know if I've got this about in the right spot. So I'm going to hit scan and OK, and the machine is going to scan what is in my hoop. It's thinking. Okay? So then it will come up on my screen. So I use both my camera and my projector, both the scanner and the projector. So see now, I can bring this down. As you can see, I'm rather lopsided. So I didn't get this I didn't get this in here very straight. So we need to do a little editing. We're going to edit. I'm going to rotate. So I need to rotate it this way. So, Jan didn't do very well. So we'll see how we do here. That looks a little bit better. Okay. And then I like to get it close, or where I think is close, with the camera, the scanning part. Okay, that looks pretty good. I think I'm okay with that. Now, if I just had my dream machine at this point, I would hit embroidery, and then I would hit the W foot up here. Oh, sorry, my camera caught my hand, so it's out of focus. It'll go back in here in a minute. Hit my little W foot up here, turn on my laser light, and then I would go down to the bottom and hit my little runaround, okay? And then the runaround up here. So let me move the camera so you can see. I don't know if you can see my laser light. You can kind of see it right here in the center. So I'm going to use my little runaround. So if I just had a dream machine, this is how I do this. We'll see my design's too low. So I need to move it up a little bit, and it's still kind of crooked. So then I would play around until I was happy with where mine was, okay? And then that's how I would do that with the dream machine. I would move things around. I would check my placement until I was happy where my design was going to sew, okay? But since I have my projector, let's go ahead and turn on the projector with the little cone here. I've got a lot of new people that have Luminaires, so the projector is an awesome feature on this machine because I can really, really tell now where everything is. Let me see. Let me get the white. It might help a little bit, maybe a little bit. We'll see. There. If I turn it darker, can you see the light a little bit? Can't see it very well, but you can see a little bit. I can see it real well. I've changed down here. You can change your background color for those of you with the Luminaires. So sometimes one color is easier to see than others. So play around with the colors, because sometimes even on the light colors, the darker backgrounds work better. You can see it better. Okay. All right. So I'm looking at this and I'm seeing that it looks pretty good at the top, but I need to scoot over to the left. So I'm going to scoot this over a little bit. I'm moving it with the move buttons. That looks better. So see, when I rotated it, I got it a lot straighter. That looks pretty good. I'm moving the projector. And I'm going to move it down here. I think I'm going to still need to move it over a little bit. Let's see. Yeah, I think it might be okay. I think I might be a little close over here on the side. But if I have a little bit of white thread there, it's going to be okay. I think otherwise it looks quite good. But I did get a little overzealous with the thread over here. I might have needed to move the stamp just a little bit further away on this one, but because this one I must have trimmed it a little bit. But it's okay. It'll be fine. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. We're going to go with this. Okay. We've got it where we want it. Turned off the projector. I'm going to hit go. So what I do when I do this, you can kind of see I'm kind of using my hand to kind of keep my sashing out of the way. Try to keep everything supported while it's sewing so that you're not dragging on your tables or off your table or on your lap, okay? Because there's a little bit of weight to these quilts. This is not a real big quilt, so it makes it pretty easy to get in. Okay. So yeah, there's a lot of you that have machines that will do this. And if you've never tried it, it is very fun to play with this part of the machine. I remember when this first came out in the Dream Machine. Yes, so the laser light is really cool, Nancy. Okay, so there's my stippling. I'm happy with that. That actually looks very good. So then I'm ready for my next block. So would you like me to do another block, or would you like me to talk a little bit more about what I did for the other stitching? Would you like me to do one more block, the little stocking? Sometimes if you just see it a couple, 3 times, it makes it easier, doesn't it? So when I do this, see, I'm just going to pull this little thing out of here. Would black show up better? It may. You mean black as in the background? Actually that was the black background. So yes, often with the white fabric I use a black background because it does show up more. Sometimes the gray one shows up really well too, Jan. Okay, so would you like me to do the stocking? Should we do one more so you can see how it works? So I'm just moving it around on the quilt, makes it easy. And these little pins, let's see if I can get these kind of out of the way. I don't like the pins underneath. Could I do a word block? Yes, I could do a word block. I did the word block in this line. Yeah, you want me to do a word block? I will. Okay, just a second. We're going to move up to the top of the quilt here. Denise would like to see a word block. Okay. I still have one word block to do. All right, so we're going to do sugar and spice. Now this one is, let me see how big it is. We might still be able to use the same hoop. Where'd I think my tape measure hit the floor here somewhere. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? It's usually on the floor or something. I can't find it. I think this is a 6x6 block. So we should be okay. I know it has to be here, guys. Oh, there it is. I found it. Stay. I found it. It went under my desk. Okay. So yes, let's do a word block. So I think this one's 6x6, as I remember. So hopefully we can use the same hoop. All right, so let's measure this. If I get it fairly centered, it should be fine. Yes, so 6 by 6. This is just under 6 by 6. So that we can still use our 8 by 8 hoop. Okay, let's do that. Good idea, Denise. Okay. So this one's kind of in the top of the quilt. Grab my hoop here. Now I do the word blocks the same way. I still make a stamp of them, and they work the same way basically. Now I'm going to have to get this a little bit more centered in the hoop because of the size of my hoop. So I may have to take some pins out here. Second. Oh, you mean, Jan, instead of the red light. Yeah, black would maybe, sometimes black for me is harder to see than the brighter color. So whatever works for you, just choose a color that works for you. All right, so now this is going to be in the top of the quilt. And we definitely want to make sure we're holding the quilt up so that we're not going to have any drag. So I've got it up in my lap. And I'm going to take a few of these pins out because when they're underneath that hoop, it makes the hoop want to kind of scooch a little bit on you. So I usually take the pins out from underneath the loop, top part of the hoop. So, all right, we'll just pull some of these pins out of here. I don't put a ton of pins in just because I don't like to have to take them out, but you know, you have to put enough in there to kind of hold things together. So, until you get some stitching on there, then it's okay. All right, get some of these out of here. But you can see I really don't have to take the quilt out of the hoop much. I can just leave it in the hoop, you know, or I can just kind of leave it in the machine, I should say, and just move it around because it really does work quite well. Now this is going to have to come up because I know it's going to be a little too low for this hoop, so I think we'll be okay now. See, I just kind of pulled the quilt. Let's get this pin out of here so we don't have a problem with it. I think we'll be okay now, though. And then this one, I'm going to have to, yeah, it might be okay. Nah, I've got this pin that's going to be a problem over here, so we'll take a couple of these more out. I just throw the pins up on the top of my machine. Yes, I did actually do yes, I did a little teeny bit of stippling in those peppermints. There's not much in there, but I did do it. You wouldn't have to. You could just stitch in the ditch around the blocks or something, but I did actually stitch in there, and it was cute. So they didn't put much in there, but it was just enough that it made it look cute. Okay, so let's make sure that's all in there. That looks pretty good. Okay. So I think I've got it centered in there fairly well. Sure that I know where the pins are so we don't have anything. Okay, so we said this was about a 6" by 6" block. So we're going to do this one. I'm going to go ahead and go back. Okay, I'm going to go into the embroidery designs and I'm going to go find that block. This is the Sugar and Spice Make the Holidays Nice block. I think it was done in a 6 by 10 hoop, as I remember. And we'll go do that one. Quilt. Let's see, I think that was one of the bigger ones, so it's probably down here towards the bottom. Let's see. Yeah, Sugar and Spice Make the Holidays Nice. That was a 6 by 10 block. Okay. Now, even though this is in here, I'm going to get this off of here so you can see when I do the stamp how it works with the letters. The letters work quite well with the stamps, but I usually do those. Oops, second here. Didn't get it all the way over. There we go. Get rid of that background. And now I can just see the letters. So when I do the letters, I'm going to do those so that they're very close to the letters. So I'm going to go ahead to the edit. We're on the editing screen. And I'm going to use a stamp. Okay. Now the letters are, I'm going to use the distance of 0 on this one. Now every now and then, depending on the lettering that I'm doing, I do move this away from the letters. If I've got something that looks kind of strange, like in the middle, this one looks really good with it around, just right around the letters, and I want it to be the distance of 0. Generally with the letters, that's what I do. And then I'm just going to hit memory. Okay. Then we're going to go back to home, go to my design center just like we did before. I'm going to get my square like we've done before. I'm going to resize it, and this was just under 6 by 6, so don't have to bring it down too much. We're going to go just under 6 by 6, maybe 5.95. There we go. And then I'm going to go get my stamp of my letters. And there's my sugar and spice one at the very beginning. And just so you know, the rest of these that are here, they go away as you add more. There's no way to delete them. They just go away as you add more in there. So mine are starting to go away because I've done a bunch of these. Okay, so there's my sugar and spice. Okay, then I'm going to go to my fill. And red, I'm just going to leave the red. I think that'll be fine. I'm going to get my stipple, get the paint pot, and touch around the lettering. Okay, then I'm going to click next. I'm going to go back to millimeters so that I can do the settings. I'm going to go to 2.5 for the length of the stitches. I'm going to do, whoops, have to get, not get quite so anxious. And then go to 6. See how it looks. Now see, it left some opening down here, and often with letters you will get a couple of extra knots. Now the other thing we could do, let's go back to 5 on this one, because this one looked a little bit better at 5. So let's see what it looks like. Because sometimes I'll actually change, and you'll not know that it's different. Now that does look a little better, so I think I'm going to leave this one at 5 because of the lettering. So that's fine. If you mix and match your stipples, no one's going to know. And I'm going to leave these 2 settings at default and click Set. Now we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and scan, make sure I don't have any pins that I think are going to get caught here. Hit the scan button. I'm just going to watch this because I do have a pin right there, so I'm kind of watching it. Should be okay. All right. So here on the screen, we're going to get this kind of organized so where we think it'll be. And of course, I'm always crooked, so I often have to do a little rotating. I'm always crooked. I don't think I ever get these hoops straight. But that's what's nice about it, is you can see what you're doing, so if it's not straight, it's okay. Alright, so I think I'm good to go here. I'm going to bring this over to the embroidery side. And then I'm going to bring my projector on. So this time I won't do the tracing, I'm just going to do the projector. I'll bring it down here so you can see what I'm doing. Now this block is a lot wider, so my projector, I'm going to have to move it up here to the side. I want to see what my corner looks like over here. And then I'm going to kind of move it along the top of the block and see if I'm happy with that. That looks pretty good. I think it needs to come over just a little bit to the right. That looks better. Yeah, I like the 5 stipple on this just because it looks neater with the lettering. With lettering, it's always hard because sometimes things are a little different. Yeah, I kind of moved it over a little bit too much. It needs to go over just a little bit again to the left. We'll go look at the other side too. But this projector is the bomb. I really like it. I wasn't sure what I thought when I thought, what are they going to do with this projector? And then when I started doing this kind of stuff, oh my gosh, it's so much easier because you really can get accurate with your That looks pretty good. It still could come down just a little bit, but I think it's not bad. That's better. I'm just going around. I kind of go to the corners. I kind of look at the corners, and that helps me know that I've got it where I want it. I think that looks pretty good. That looks pretty good. I think we're good with that. Now this one, just so you know, may stop a couple of times. So you may have a couple of knots here, but it's because of the lettering. But I don't really do them any differently, and when you see them done, they don't look any different than any of the other ones. You do want to kind of hold up, because I've got most of the quilt hanging in my lap, so I want to kind of hold it up so it doesn't drag. That's the other reason why I like the smaller hoops, because you don't get the drag as you do with the big hoops, because you can hold the quilt up easier, I think. So I have a tendency to use small hoops and just do one block at a time. It doesn't take anything to move it, so. But isn't this cool? Yes, Denise, this projector is like the thing. I just love the projector. Because when I started doing some of these, it just really makes a difference. Oops, bring it back a little bit so you can see. There we go. Now I notice I hit a little letter over here, so I can kind of see my white thread, but you know what? That's what they make red Sharpie markers for. So I may take a little red Sharpie marker and just, you know, what you don't know won't hurt you, right? Because that's the only thing, and like when you're doing these, what it does in the software, when it brings in your stamp, it puts it in the center. And so if you have gotten your block slightly off center, you know, things may not line up perfectly, but if you're pretty careful when you do your hooping, everything's going to be very close. So I've actually had really good luck. I noticed that a little teeny bit of white is showing, so I'll just take a little red Sharpie marker and you'll never see it. So see, this one's going to have a few little knots on the back, but I'm okay with that. And like if I were to wash this, which you probably wouldn't anyway because of all the stuff on it, when you wash these, if you trim your knots a little bit, they actually will kind of shrivel up and become very small, and you hardly see them. So. Now the one thing I did want to tell you, I'm going to show you a block when this is done. It's almost done. A couple of these blocks had some special placement lines in them. So if you're doing what I'm doing like this and needing to make stamps, you have to remove a couple of the lines. So I know a lot of you have software, so I'll show you what I did. There was a couple of these that had specialty lines in them, like for trimming or for the placement of the block, so that like the jars, for instance, were lower on the block. And but isn't that cool? I mean, and now I'm 2/3 done with this already. I mean, I haven't really worked very hard at it, and I'll do a little bit of quilting on the machine with it. There we go. I think that's it. Oh, there must be a little piece. Sometimes it'll put a little piece down inside someplace here, but yep, a little bit. I just put a little bit down there by the E. And that's it. So what do you think? Yeah, I do all the letters that way. I've always been happy with them. Okay. So what I was saying about these jars over here, like there's a couple of these that I had to put in my software. Let's just take this out. Like the jars here, they have like a line up here in the design, and like this one up here. And so what I did is I just opened it up in my software, and I'll show you what I did. I saved them. And I know most of you have software that you could do this. It was very simple. So what I did is like down here at the bottom, can you see the jar? Here's the flower jar. So what I did is there was a line up here at the top. So of course when I made my stamp, it wanted to put the stamp around that line, and I didn't want that in there. So what I did is I just took it out and resaved it as the flower jar and used this to make my stamp, okay? And then like the other one was this sugar jar. It had a line up at the top. So that's what I did. I opened it up in my PEP software, just took that line out and resaved it to use this one as a stamp. Then the other one was the rolling pin. The rolling pin had some placement lines up and down. So I just took those lines off of the design and resaved it as a rolling pin. So I did that. And then remember the little peppermint design? It had the little square, so you trimmed on the peppermint. So see, I needed to get that box off of there because then it wouldn't give me any stippling. So I just took the square off and saved it. And then I could use that one for my stamp. How did I take the line out? I just bring it into the PEP software, Nancy, and I think you have yours now, and then I just select that piece and I hit delete on the keyboard and just resave it as a PES file and named it. I didn't save over the original design. I just saved it as a different design just to use for my stamps. So those were the designs there that had that. They had those extra lines in them. That's the only ones I had. I think it was just these 4 that I had to do. Otherwise, I just used them as they were. Okay. So, the next thing, once I kind of get done with a couple more rows, and I don't think I need to do this. We're about done for the evening. So I think you'll understand. I'm going to go ahead, I know these little sashings are really narrow. So let me go back, and I'm just going to bring up the sewing machine for a second. Oh, still got my hoop on here. Just a second. I got to take it off because the machine's mad. All right. There we go. So we'll just pretend we're going to sew. If you don't have any software, Kathy, I can send you the designs, those 4. It's just those 4. I can send them to you. I've got them, so I can just send them to you. Remind me, though, will you? Okay, so I want to, in these little sashings, so one of the things I'm going to do is on these, I used the serpentine, and I made it wide enough to basically be the entire width of this little 1/2-inch sashing. So my serpentine's on the quilting tab, and here it is down here. And I think I left it at the default length, which is, let's see, about 2, but I wanted it to be the full width. Actually, no, I think I made it narrower. I think I made it like 1 or 1.2 maybe. And then, but I wanted it the entire width of that little thing, so I went all the way up to 7 millimeters because then it was almost the entire width of that 1/2-inch strip. Okay, so you may just need to do a little test sew on something just to make sure you got it the size you want it. I think that was the settings I used, maybe 1.4, 1.2 for the length, and then about 7 for the width. And then I just sewed with and I didn't even put the walking foot on. I just sewed the little serpentine in all of these little sashing strips. I just thought it looked really cute. It just needed, it looked empty without it. Okay? And then I just took a straight stitch then, whoops, and I turned on my laser light, okay, and I sewed on these little squares here. I went from corner to corner, and then I went up this way. I just kept going this way, up and down. I went, see if you can see a few more blocks. So I just did corner to corner, and then I went back up this way and down and up and down. And then I turned around and came back the other direction, so there ended up being X's in all these little squares across here. And that seemed to work really well. Okay, and then I did the same thing with the little ones. And I didn't even put a walking foot on. I know I just did this with my regular foot. You can put a walking foot on if you want. I have a tendency to quilt without a walking foot. So then I did the same thing here, but I didn't do just each individual square. I did 2 squares at a time. So they were like rectangular X's instead. So I just went from corner to corner to corner to corner like this, and I just went up and down and just moved the quilt back and forth. And then I started from the other side and went the other direction, and I had X's then. So I did that with the sewing machine. And then I quilted my border. And I'm going to quilt my border again with my border feature. So for those of you, like I said, that don't have that, kind of look at your borders. I thought maybe the serpentine would be really cute, doing lines of serpentine on the borders. I think that would be very cute. Doing some sort of a decorative stitch, straight stitching, maybe doing X's. There's all kinds of things you can do with just basic straight stitching. So I am going to do the border function, and so I will make a video of me actually doing the entire border on this. But please, if you're doing it with the sewing machine, show me what you've done. I thought the serpentine stitches would be really cute on the border, and just doing rows of serpentine, because it makes such a cute stitch on a lot of things. And people stitch with or quilt with serpentine stitches all the time. Okay? All right. So, does everybody kind of have an idea of where to go with their quilting? I know a lot of you have this ability in your machine, so give her a try. It's really fun, and it's a good way to quilt your quilt, and it's very fast. Once you get going, it's just like super fast. Okay? Because, you know, I've got, 2 full rows done plus an extra block, and I'm ready to do I'm going to do some sashing. I'll probably do some of this tonight, and I'll just keep going. There's only 5 blocks on the bottom, and I've got about 9 on the top to do. So it's amazing how quickly you can get this little quilt quilted. Yes, you could do some sort of an edge-to-edge quilting on it as well. It is only 3.5 inches, though, Nancy, so it might be a little hard to get it done with edge-to-edge, because that would be fine. You could do the edge-to-edge and just do it'd be like the final, the final row off the edge. So yes, you could do an edge-to-edge over that too. That would be fine. So I didn't think about that, but that would be fine. Any kind of thing you want to do. You could drop little designs. Like I had this really cute little Christmas set that had like little snowflakes and little mittens and stuff. You could just kind of do some math and drop the little designs. They would fit really well in here, actually. Drop the little designs, evenly space them, and just drop the little designs all the way around. That would be really cute too. So you can kind of do anything you want with your border. Do it with your sewing machine. Do some sort of little outline that you like. Like that was an old Anita Good design, and I used that on a lot of Christmassy quilts. That I just dropped like little mittens all the way around, and I just kind of did some math, and figured out where I wanted to put them and put them as evenly spaced as I could, and then I just hooped it and did them one at a time. It was very easy. Okay. All right. So, is everybody ready to quilt? You think you can quilt? I'm so excited to see all of your We Whisk You Merry Christmases. This has been a really, really fun quilt. Would you like to do some more quilts like this? Some smaller ones, or some more Kimberville quilts? I really like their stuff. It's easy and fun, and the embroidery is easy too. So maybe we can do another one. I like the size because it didn't take too long, and the blocks were easy. Okay. All right. So next week we're going to do purses. We're going to do some sewing. We're going to make the little clasp purses. I will have some more books available. I know a few of you don't have your books yet, but the books should be here this week. So I'll get the books to you as quickly as I can. And then also, those of you who ordered the backing fabric for We Whisk You Merry Christmas, I will get in touch with you on Tuesday once I get it all cut so that you can get it picked up. So, okay? And nobody's paid for that yet, so you can just pay when you pick it up. But I've got that ready to go. Oh, about adding the embellishments. Actually, Denise, the embellishments are very easy on this quilt. Most of them are buttons, so you just have to sew the buttons on. There's a button on each of one of the aprons, and then there is a little bow on the little whisk. There's a little bow on that. And then, let's see, what else was on here? Oh, there was some cute little, like little pom-poms that they use like marshmallows on one of the cups. And those I just hot glued on. So no, this one was very easy to do the embellishments. The embellishments on some of them are a little tedious. This one was really nice and easy. So no, I don't think you'll have any trouble at all. Okay. Oh yes, there is a class on Thursday night. That was Lynn's class, and it's full. I think there's 17 people in that class, but that is Lynn's God Bless America. Janine Babish, God Bless America, but that is full. So Nancy, I don't think you're in that class. Okay? So any other questions? So you can always, as you're working on quilting, please, get back to me. If you need any help, let me know. And then we will make some purses next week. I'm so excited. This book is so cool, and it has all those cool patterns in it. So I think we'll make some of those. And I was able to get actually a dealership directly from the company, Zaka Workshop. So I'll have all of the purse clasps that are in the book, and the rest of the books are coming. She mailed them last week, so she's a very nice gal, and so she's going to be sending them, and I'll let you know, because we'll have the books hopefully before Sunday. So hopefully almost everybody will get their book. I had about 10 people that hadn't got books yet. So, okay? All right, so if you have any questions, let me know, and I will see you next week for purses. And I want to see pictures of your quilts, so I'm anxious to see the quilts coming up as they're done. So everybody have a good evening, and I'll see you later. Thank you.